Hi folks, I haven't done one of these compass videos in a while. We're not gonna obsess about the camera placement and how much headroom there is, are we? No, we're not. We're not. We're gonna carry on. Ever since I started doing the weekly overviews, the need for a compass video has kind of decreased. And I used to do these compass videos to kind of just now and then something would come up in the course of the work that I do outside of doing these videos, my readings essentially. And it would feel like there was a need to kind of, outside of the primary aspects and transits and everything that was going on at the time, kind of to do a check-in about sort of what the energy felt like at a given point and to clarify certain things. And it seems very relevant today and at this point in time. I did a weekly overview video 2 days ago, and this video is very much in connection to that and related to that. We are at the midpoint for all intents and purposes between the two eclipses, the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse on the 17th and the Libra new moon solar eclipse on October the 2nd. Today is the last quarter moon. After today, the moon is going to start to diminish in size markedly and become dark, and then have the new moon and then increase. So as those of you who've been watching my channel know, now that the quarter moon is done, our own energy is going to subside. We're going to feel the need to release this last month, especially as we head to the weekend. And the fact that Mercury and the Sun are going to be conjuncting on September the 30th isn't going to help matters. I think that's going to just I would imagine that there's work that needs to be done and things that need to be attended to, and the fact that we ourselves are at a place where we're turning the key and starting to go down the path of whether there's a change coming externally or not, we're going to be the cause of change in our lives, and we're done with the status quo, and we've learned what we've learned since April of 2023, and we're going to make certain changes happen now till the end of the first week of June of next year. That energy is present, and we may continue to be productive in that direction, but energetically we're going to be, we start the last week of the Virgo month that started at the new moon of Virgo on September the 2nd. And so there might even be an urge to wrap up things that we wanted to do related to the Virgo part of our chart at this point in time, goals that we had, things we want to initiate, get those done and rolling and moving by the time we get to the weekend. On Tuesday, we have the new moon solar eclipse. Certainly Sunday and Monday, we may well want to, the energy is going to be like, let me just, hide under the covers and watch YouTube videos, or whatever it is that you want to watch, Netflix or whatever. So that is roughly where we are. But we are also, because there's something this particular year and this particular week, there's something very tidy about the way the aspects are occurring. Earlier today, Mercury opposed Neptune, Mercury in Virgo, Neptune in Pisces, and tomorrow, actually no, later today for me, Mercury trines Pluto, Mercury in Virgo, Pluto in Capricorn, and ends basically all the aspects in connection to or related to the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse are done in a few hours time. And then starting the 28th, we start to have aspects that correspond to and connect to the October 2nd solar eclipse. Specifically, we have the Sun conjuncting the South Node on the 28th. We have Mercury conjuncting the South Node on the 29th, and the Sun and Mercury conjunct, which is kind of separate, but then we have the new moon solar eclipse on October the 2nd. So by the time, as we, at the last quarter moon, in between, as we get to the day in between the two eclipses, we also, any pending aspects related to the lunar eclipse, and we may have felt issues come to a head related to this lunar eclipse the week before and after July 17th, as I've mentioned to you numerous times, or September 17th. We are now at that midpoint where the energy and the focus are going to start to shift. Mercury enters Libra tomorrow. As I said, in a couple of days' time on the 20th, the Sun conjuncts the South Node, then Mercury conjuncts the South Node, and then we have the Sun-Mercury conjunction, and then we have the new moon solar eclipse in Libra on the 2nd. So we are at that midpoint. And And at this particular midpoint, it just so works out this year that the focus of the attention changes. We are technically done with the energies related to the Pisces lunar eclipse now until January, because I think March the 19th is the next eclipse on the Virgo Pisces cycle, unless I'm mistaken. Is it March the 19th? It may not be March the 19th. I think it's sooner than that. Give me one sec. Let me just confirm that date for you. March the 13th. March the 13th. And 2 months before that makes it January 13th. So it's really going to be, is that the week of inauguration coming up there? Oh, brother. January 13th, the week before, week after, is when we may next start to get pulled into the eclipse axis of Pisces Virgo. These are both lunar eclipses, the vast majority, except for one, I think. No, maybe, I off the top of my head, I don't want to derail this particular video. The vast majority of the eclipses on the Pisces Virgo axis are lunar eclipses. And now that we're done with this particular lunar eclipse, the next set of energy on the Pisces Virgo eclipse axis starts up on January the 13th, the week before, week after. So January the 6th onwards. And those are the two dates, the week before, week after January 13th, week before, week after March the 13th, that even though the eclipses are in Virgo, the eclipse on March the 13th is a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo. We're back to the Pisces Virgo axis. And now the energy starts to shift after today, tomorrow. The sun conjuncts the north node, Mercury conjuncts the north node. We have the new moon solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd, and December 2nd, the week before, week after, may also feel eclipsy for some people. Some people will feel this particular eclipse the week before, after October 2nd, some people the week before, after December the 2nd. And that starts to, and then, yeah, and you know, we're kind of doing this relay. You take one eclipse, I take one eclipse. The Pisces Virgo axis takes the first lunar eclipse on September 17th of this year and March 13th of next year. And the Aries Libra axis takes the second solar eclipse, October 2nd of this year and March 29th next year, when in 2025, when we have the last of the Aries solar eclipses. So that's roughly where we are. And there's one thing that I really want to draw in this sort of compass video, that I really, a fuller set of analysis of where we are at this week's energy are contained in the weekly overview from 2 days ago. Okay, so if you want to understand the energy of this week and what we are headed towards and what all this is about, and for greater expansion of what I've talked about over the past 7 minutes, look at that video. I'm now going to come back to making this a compass video about two things. There are two topics that have come up. Either I'm noticing them coming up as events in clients' lives, in readings, and energetically, and I feel like I want to draw your attention to them. One of them might mean that there's an opportunity for a certain kind of focus and a certain kind of action as this week progresses. And then one of them is really more of a clarification about what the South Node really stands for, because I'm sensing and hearing things that are not quite aligned to my experience at the South Node. So those are the two things I want to clarify. I also want to say that even though we're done, and this is important, even though we're done with the Pisces eclipses, Pisces Virgo eclipses for now, and the baton is being passed on to and taken up by the Aries Libra eclipses that have been going on since March, April of 2023 and continue to exercise their influence till the end of the first week of June of 25. Remember, we still have Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces. So the Pisces energy and the idea of stabilizing Pisces, the Pisces part of our chart, is not leaving us. It is very much one of the houses that, even though the eclipses are pulling back, to some extent till the middle of next year, so that the Aries Libra eclipses can be done. But remember, there's still that Virgo eclipse that's going to exercise its influence between January and March. Even though that's done, we still have a lot hitting the Pisces part of our chart, not least a Mercury and a Venus retrograde at the same time in March, April of 2025, And at no point can we ever ignore the part of the chart that Saturn is transiting. So the energy still very much remains our future adventure, growth, opportunities may well continue to come from the Aries, Taurus, and Gemini part of the chart. North Node in Aries currently, Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Gemini, but it is the Pisces part of the chart that demands responsible stabilization. So topics related to it don't sabotage the direction that we're trying to go in. Just a friendly reminder. Now, the first of the two things I wanted to talk about in this video is that, as I mentioned to you last week, the week when we had the lunar eclipse that was conjunct Neptune, the Pisces lunar eclipse that was conjunct Neptune, a few days after that, the Sun trined Pluto and Uranus and opposed Neptune. And this week, today and yesterday, the 24th and the 25th, Mercury followed suit. Mercury trined Uranus yesterday, yes, on the 24th. And on the 25th, today, Mercury has already opposed Neptune, and quite frankly, in a few hours, is getting ready to trine Pluto as I do this video. And I've talked in the last couple of weeks a lot about the opportunity, the turning the key feeling, the opportunity for change, the fact that opportunities may be coming up for people externally, or that we are done with the status quo. And I've spent a certain amount of time talking about these trines, which don't happen all that often, so they're worth looking at. And why not focus on some of the happier, easier, flowier transits that are occurring, aspects that are occurring between transiting planets. In the weekly video for this week, I've also talked about the Mars-Saturn trine. So yeah. If you want, this video is only about these 2 points that I want to raise as clarifications. I still think they're important, and yes, I am going to get to them. But a larger overview of the week in the weekly overview. When it came to talking about the eclipse, I absolutely emphasized and talked about the importance of the conjunction with Neptune. I talked about the fact that the eclipse, whether it was the week before and after July the 17th, whether it is the week before and after September the 17th as well, it was a light on toxicity and or vagueness. The vagueness could be the way we are approaching matters and our inability to structure and stabilize issues and matters related to the Pisces part of the chart. The vagueness could have to do with if we are trying to move things along and push them along in a spiritual or artistic direction, our plans may be too unstructured, and so they need greater definition. But the toxicity and the vagueness from other parties, or in certain cases from us if we're playing our cards too close to our chest and not declaring what we're doing or not being clear with what we're doing, that energy also got focused on when I talked about the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces in that video, and I'll place a link to that video at the end of this one. I did it last week. It's or a few days before the lunar eclipse on September 17th, so you can find it that way as well. And what I am finding over the past few days is that while everything I said in the weekly overview about Mercury trining Uranus and Pluto holds true with regard to us turning the page and being done with the status quo and moving towards the change that we have been meaning to or wanting to create since April of last year, Mercury opposing Neptune has made its presence felt. Some of us may have received communications around Neptunian topics in the Pisces part of the chart that have been plaguing us for a while. Whether this goes back to 2012, whether this goes back to the crisis in 2014, especially 14, 15, especially 16, 17, and since then. And the nature of the communication, when I said that whatever it is that has come to a head in an eclipsy way, whether it was the week before and after July the 17th or the week before and after September the 17th, related to the Pisces part of the chart with a conjunction to Neptune and a spotlight on vagueness or toxicity. and today being the last of the transits aspects made by the transiting planets connected to that eclipse, I really think that the Mercury-Neptune opposition may have brought up something. It could be some external communication. It could be some communication that comes from you, from us, from others to us, that has made us sit up and think, I need to communicate about this. I need to the advantage of Mercury following Venus and the Sun can be that by the time Mercury catches up to aspects that have been made by Venus and the Sun and a new moon or a full moon, things become actionable. And they become actionable both from a planning perspective, an organizing perspective, and how am I going to get this done perspective, and how am I going to organize myself, and how am I going to be productive about this perspective, which is a set of mental activities. Mercury rules Virgo. It's very Virgoic. How am I going to get this done? How am I going to execute this? How am I going to be productive? How am I going to be organized? How am I going to be structured? How will I keep on top of the details? How will I make sure that I execute on this successfully to build something really, or achieve something really strong and stable, or achieve what it is that I've set out to achieve? And the other part of the mercurial activity, of course, is connected to Mercury ruling the sign of Gemini. How am I going to communicate about this? What am I going to say? And we might be at a point, if we have not already in the last 48 hours, we might be contemplating how to respond to something that has triggered this kind of Neptunian haze for us. Someone is being shady. Someone is not being clear. Someone is being deceptive. Someone, or our own perception of a situation is that it is shadier than it actually is, but we only feel that because it might involve parties that have been shady in the past. So this idea of something occurring over the past 48, 72 hours, and us needing to go, you know what? I need to try and get some clarity around this. Now, the clarity will either come or it won't come, but in the act of communicating, something likely will be achieved. Remember, when a faster moving planet opposes a slower moving planet, in this case Mercury opposing Neptune, Mercury in Virgo has to support Neptune and Pisces. And support does not mean that we do something, especially if someone is being Neptunian with us in a shady way. Support doesn't mean that we open our purse strings to them. Support may mean that Neptune is trying to give us or bring us visibility around what it is that we, yes, need to release or sacrifice, or what is not for us. But also maybe highlighting who or what is not acting in a way that is completely clean. And communicating from a Virgo point means that some sort of communication related to details, specifics, accuracy. What is going on here? Hey, I received this for you. We did this, but I just need to clarify. Can we just get clear on this? Let me just put this in writing. Let me just bring this back to a grounded space. And even if the other party responds the other party could say, that is absolutely not the case. Please relax. The other party can say, are you crazy? What are you imagining? The other party it can lead to something that actually gives you a sense of, something is not right, but they're still being shady. Whatever those different outcomes are, it can lead to someone not responding. It can lead to someone again, sort of obfuscating. But the bottom line is that you may have the urge to say, whatever it is that you do, I'm stating some facts here. in response to something that came up. And if you're feeling that urge, it could be you responding. It could be that if it's in a certain situation, like you're dealing with some sort of a complex situation or a legal situation or whatever, that it doesn't make sense for you to be the one responding. It could be whoever it is that you're partnering with that does the responding. Or you respond in a different way. There's also something here, because we're talking about an opposition to Neptune, talking to your own sense of self-worth, communicating from a place of your own sense of self-worth. So some of this could have to do with building and creating and structuring plans related to creative or spiritual pursuits in the Pisces part of the chart from the Virgo part of the chart. And communicating, thinking, planning, structuring are all part of mercurial activities. And some of it could be actually feeling like I need to get in communication about something here, because something either between the middle of July to the middle of September, something has gone on again that is reminiscent. It could be that the eclipses are bringing something to your attention again, saying, this is what I need you to stabilize. And in the process of the communication, if things emerge that we're the ones who've gone off the deep end because we're imagining things based on our past experiences, which is part of, as I've explained to you before, Neptune's influence during its transit can be so challenging, because if someone has lied to us once or not been completely clear once or twice or 3 times, we think that every single time we have a communication with them, it's got to be that. And it kind of puts us on, can I trust this person? Totally fair. If we're dealing with someone who has a tendency to gaslight, oh, you misheard things. Oh, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. Oh, I think you're being paranoid. You know, that kind of stuff. Then it worsens the communication, because you heard what you heard. You've seen what you've seen. And particularly if you're dealing with kind of a narcissistic type who never takes responsibility for what it is that they've done, you know, is always finding ways to sing their own praises or reporting their own praises. So-and-so said that I'm the one who's responsible for this. And did you know that I'm responsible? You know, never kind of, then these things can become quite challenging. So in the process of communicating about something, if that is where you're at, shall I, shan't I, should I, shouldn't I? I mean, you're going to have to gauge this based on your particular set. And as I said, in certain cases, it may not make sense for you to be the one who is communicating, or it may not make any sense to communicate at all. It may make sense for the mercurial action to be different in nature altogether. You're dealing with a divorce situation, you're dealing with an alimony situation, you're dealing with a property situation, it may make sense for lawyers to be involved, for the communication to occur there. It may make sense for no communication to occur right now, but you plan and communicate with the people who you are partnering with regard to how you're going to respond to something eventually, and what the right time is to respond to something. Because something has come up as a result of these eclipses in the last week and a half, and even as Mercury has come into place after the sun and after the eclipses in the last couple of days, where you feel like, here it is again. And something needs to be done about it. And you're either then in planning and strategizing mode, or you're in mode where you're like, I need to communicate about something. And what I get back through this communication is, look, nothing like this is going on. And it feels, then at least you've started to reach one of the things that Saturn in stabilizing matters related to the Pisces part of the chart is doing, and what the eclipses may also be trying to achieve, which is to separate the wheat from the chaff with, here's what's real, but here's what's not. And here's where the lessons are. But even if what you get back continues to be living in that same Neptunian space as someone not responding, or someone responding saying that you're this or you're that, at least you had the opportunity to articulate what are the facts. So in the weekly overview, and I think in last week's weekly overview, I emphasized a lot about the trines. The Sun and Mercury trining Uranus and Pluto. And Mercury trine Pluto is still pending as I'm doing this video later today. In the eclipse video, I absolutely focused on the conjunction to Neptune. I had to. It's the first of the Pisces eclipses. We have Saturn in Pisces. We had the eclipse conjuncting Neptune, and it was just about a full Neptune, insofar as the Sun was a few degrees away from opposing Neptune completely. But even when I did the weekly overview a couple of days ago, I thought, am I shortchanging Mercury opposing Neptune? And I didn't. When you watch that video, you'll see I can do a very quick summary of it. But given everything that I've seen through my readings and my work over the past 72 hours, I was just like, let me just put this out there for the people who feel like this resonates. As I said, the aspects related to the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces and whatever it is that was dusted up either the week before and after July the 17th or the week before and after September 17th, the week after September 17th for all intents and purposes ending today, and the week before October the 2nd starting today, has now dusted up and done whatever it is that needed to do, and there may be a need for a response, given the fact that it's Mercury that has just completed the opposition to Neptune earlier today. You might be at a point where the rational planet is trying to pin down the jello to the wall planet. And there needs to be some sort of either planning, strategic action, depending on the seriousness of what you're dealing with. Then consult with the right advisors, consult with a financial planner. If you're dealing with taxation issues, consult with the right people to put something in place. It may not be that you need to respond directly to something, or that's the wisest thing for you to do. But it may be that it puts you in a place where you need to start to be in conversation with people. Or else you do feel like, I need to get to the bottom. I need to at least document something rational, Virgoic. I need to at least communicate something rational, Virgoic, and see what comes back. If what comes back allows me to get clear on what is and has been nebulous, but also what is not, that will bring me peace of mind. And I might be able to heal some of the confusion that I've been dealing with in the Pisces part of the chart and realize that not everything is tainted with Neptunian haziness. Or if what I get back continues to be in that pattern, at least I know that I've done my own due diligence and communicated what I know to be facts and what I know to be the truth. Now, the second thing I wanted to bring up in this video that starts to talk about the South Node. When we talk about the South Node, and the South Node is transiting Libra right now, and the October 2nd solar eclipse in Libra is close enough to the South Node. Sometimes eclipses, when they occur in the sign where the nodes are transiting, and sometimes they occur when, the March 29th eclipse in Aries is going to occur while the North Node is actually moved into Pisces. But the eclipse is actually in Aries. It happens depending on how close, there's a certain area in the chart with regard to degrees as to how far things are when eclipses occur. But the October 2nd eclipse is pretty on top of, as I said, on the 28th, the Sun conjuncts the South Node. 5 days later, we have the solar eclipse. And with the South Node, I hear a lot of talk about releasing things. But I don't always get the sense that there's a full understanding of what it is that we're trying to or meant to release. It isn't just releasing things or getting rid of things either as an act of sacrifice or because they're cluttering up our lives. That's just cleanup that needs to be done no matter what. And the whole sacrifice issue, we'll give that over to Neptune. The idea with the South Node is that currently in the Libra part of the chart, there's some situation, I'll refer to it as the status quo. Okay, this is what I meant by in the weekly overview when I talk about us being fed up with the status quo and determining to move forward and start to make certain changes, whether those changes are symbolized by opportunities that are clear to us and that help us to move towards those changes, or whether we are just like we're making those changes ourselves. The idea with the South Node is that it is a situation that has served its purpose, but it also provides a kind of comfort. With the South Node, when the South Node is in our birth chart, where the South Node is in our birth chart, there's an idea that there are behaviors and patterns and strengths and skills related to that South Node placement that are so strong in us that we automatically, subconsciously live in and play in that arena. We're good at it. We shine in it in a certain sense. It's effortless. But because it has been mastered, there's no growth there. And over time, especially in the second half of life after the ages of 38 to 44, but at any time, playing in the North Node can also feel so right, but it can also feel so exciting, and we know that there's growth there, there's learning there. It feels right. It feels like it's what we're here to do. With the South Node, it feels like something we can fall back into easily. Sometimes in the first half of life, we can even make money at it easily with the South Node, but it doesn't bring fulfillment. I refer to it sometimes as an overripe fruit. I think of it as a status quo that is comfortable, that has sort of a comfort zone around it, but there's no growth. So staying in that South Node space ultimately feels like it can even just lead to outright loss. It feels like we're living there and there's a certain comfort, but there's no life, there's no growth. It's when people feel like they are stuck. It's when your heart keeps calling out to you and saying, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, and you're in a state or a situation that is not bearing any results anymore. That has nothing to give you. Now, that does not mean that when it comes to how it manifests in your physical life, that things should just be discarded willy-nilly. And this goes back to some of the things I covered in the weekly overview. Do not get too attached right now as to what the final outcome of things would or needs to look like by the end of the first week of June of 2025. Unless it is absolutely clear to you what you are moving towards and what you are releasing in physical form. If for some of you this means that you're moving apartments, moving cities, then as long as it's clear that that is happening, then clearly if you are not going to have a foot in city A and city B, and you are going to move from city A to city B, and that makes sense, that is clear to you, and that is actually having all of that resonates, and all the due diligence is done, and it is a grounded and sane decision, then if it makes sense to release city A, then it makes sense to release city A. But if I were to take that same analogy, and let's say that you are not sure yet whether you're simply going to move to city B or you're going to keep one foot in each. I know that sounds fantastical, but just bear with me here. The final outcome has not yet been designed. Why do people have children? Seriously. It's It's so funny when I'm in this mode, how I mean, it's Glendale, California. I'm not living in the middle of the Hollywood Basin. It's just has to do with the time of the day. Hold on one sec, I'm closing the window. Yes, we're talking about my window again. Jeez. Ah, oh, peace at last. Are we not populated enough? And do we not want to retire and have retirement funds, I suppose, just spend our money on muling critters? Anyway. So when it comes to what needs to be released in order to, when I've talked about the fact that we don't want, the direction that we want to move in is going to be symbolized right now in connection with the October 2nd eclipse and where the North Node and South Node are right now. The South Node is in Libra, the North Node is in Aries. The North Node is in Aries. That's where the call is. That's where, if you know the Aries part of the chart, that's what we need to lean into. That's what we need to explore. That's what we need to grow. That we need to, and even if we don't end up with a certain or a specific outcome, remember I've always said that the North Node promises more than it delivers. So you might move towards the North Node thinking, oh, I'm going to end up with a penthouse apartment in, I don't know, San Francisco. I'm going to, and you end up in a relatively decent one-bedroom. Just know how the North Node works. It creates this hunger, this pull, this vision, and by all means, go for it. If you can, in a grounded manner, get to the penthouse apartment in San Francisco, go for it. But in the process of going for whatever it is that call, that adventure, that growth is, if the final outcome is not defined, you don't need to prematurely impose an outcome onto it. Because it could be that some sort of solution presents itself where you're like, you know what? I'm going to keep my apartment in Denver and something else has worked out in San Francisco that allows me to, or whatever it is. But, be clear about what the status quo is that you're trying to move away from. And I would hazard to say that be clear that there's something about it that may feel comfortable, but is not yielding any fruit anymore. It's kind of dead. It's kind of flat. It has no growth. It has no adventure. It has no life. One of the ways to kind of think about the South Node and the North Node is when you're living in your South Node, it can often feel like we are just kind of losing energy. It feels like we're growing old. And then we're in the space of the North Node, we just feel alive and we feel younger and we feel healthier and we feel vital and we're doing things and we're even hustling because the North Node creates that hustle. I'm not saying that you are burning the midnight oil or killing yourself over something, or you know where I'm going. What I mean by that, one has to be careful about the kind of language one uses on YouTube or impersonally. I'm not saying that the hustle has to be desperate, but hustles are exciting when they come from a place of, oh wow, I really want to do this, and I really want to do this, and I want to get this done, and I want to get this done. That is what I mean by that North Node-y life. And in the South Node, it's like, yeah, everything's fine. I got to do this. Oh yeah, I'm going to do this too, and I'm going to, you know, it's part of the reason why, I don't know whether it's my North Node related, but it could be. It's part of the reason why I'm doing these $50 readings, or, you know, searching for topics, or it's just like, what can I do to keep feeling so that things don't feel like, oh, another video. And they're never quite that, but ideas keep coming. The ideas for growth keeps coming. The ideas for different ways to generate income, different ways to offer services, a different audience to offer services to. If I had not If the idea for these 30-minute readings had not come to me, there are so many people that I would not have met as a result of that. You know what anyway. It's nice, isn't it, when people are having a good time? And children should play out in the open, shouldn't they? I'm very, very fond of this apartment. I can look out at a calamansi tree, and there's an avocado tree, but it also means that the apartment is at the back of the building. So it means that the lots, the two sets of houses that are on the street opposite, back up into the kind of back of this apartment complex. So while it's lovely to have these south-facing windows and to get the sunlight and to get the light and to have these fruit trees, and you know, there are these electric wires, squirrels run over the electric wire. It's lovely, it's charming, and I can see into the Glendale Hills and all that kind of stuff and Eagle Rock. So that part is, but because people's lawns, it's just like, oh my God. And sometimes, you know, we have barbecues and some of you have said that this is why you watch my videos, so I'm just, you know, obliging. It's been bothering me a little bit when I've been hearing people talk about the South Node, or I've seen other content about the South Node come up, and I'm just like, what needs to be released is not a question of decluttering. What needs to be released is likely a situation or a circumstance that had utility at some point, because we're not talking about the South Node in your birth chart, we're talking about a South Node that's transiting. So it likely had utility at some point, but has ceased to have utility. And it offers a certain kind of comfort and ease, but it is not offering growth. In fact, it is creating stagnation. So one of the things to contemplate is, where's the Aries part of your chart and how is it pulling you forward? And where's the Libra part of the chart? And where is it currently saying, release something there? You know, if you're something like a Gemini rising and you've got Aries in the 11th house and Libra in the 5th house, it could be, among other things, it could be a need to play in group dynamics and group arenas and with friends and with social circles that are, as it is starting to pull you out a little bit of kind of having the North Node eclipses in the 12th house, which kind of gave you a certain isolation, which again may have been needed at the time, but now it's time to, and being part of groups, etc., offers growth. And temporarily being a solo player or a standout star or doing your own thing may not, it may be that some element of that needs to be pulled back, even if we continue that, because houses can stand for different things. If you're a Gemini rising, it could also mean that there's a need to lean more into friendship and objectivity in relationships, and a little bit less, just temporarily, into the romantic side of things. So these are different ways to kind of think this through. If you have Aries in your 10th house, that would make you Gemini, Cancer rising. If you have Aries in your 10th house, it might mean that something about where you are living, home, land, residence, you are thinking about, is this the right place for me? Is this the right city for me? Is this the right location for me? You're contemplating it. The move might happen more when the eclipses move into the 9th house, which they've started that process on September the 17th, and the South Node moves into the 3rd house. Sometimes the move can happen when the South Node is in the 4th house, sometimes. But that idea of what is it that is stagnant? Even if you take the opposite placement, and let's say that the North Node eclipses are happening in your 4th house. Aries is in your 4th house, which means Pisces, Aquarius, your Capricorn rising, and Aries is in your 4th house, and Libra is in your 10th house. You could be in a particular situation where you have gotten everything you can or a lot that you can from a certain place career-wise, and you actually need to contemplate making some sort of change to residence, working from home, where you are living, where you need to lean into the real estate or the location side of things in order to release something where you're at from a career perspective so that the next thing can come up. For example, you're an actor and you're in, I give this archetypal example with this transit, and you're living in Denver and you realize, oh, I need to move to Los Angeles, or I need to move to New York. I've gotten what I can out of this community. But the release is not as simple as, oh, I just need to declutter, or I just need to somehow sacrifice something. The release is around something that had a purpose at some point, has served its purpose, is keeping you from growing. And the signs and the signals will come the week before and after October 2nd, the week before and after December 2nd. Sometimes with the eclipses, it's the, you have a south node eclipse and it's the north node that shows itself, an opportunity comes up somewhere and it's just like, oh, now that this opportunity's come up, I know what I need to release, and it prompts the release because the nodes are literally opposite each other. They're not separate. Yes, they are opposing points, but it's the same principle. So in order for the south node to be active, something's going on with the north node. In order for the north node to actually, for you to lean into the north node, you've got to release something in the south node. They go together, 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 together. And with the October 2nd South Node eclipse, as I said, we've already gone through we've already gone through a solar eclipse. I think it was October 14th of 2023. So the week before and after October 14th, week before and after December 14th, week before and after January 24th, 25th, week before after March 24th, 25th. So that would be October and December 23, January and March 24. We've already had signs of what is it that needs to be released. And we may already, because that was a complete eclipse cycle in Libra, the only complete eclipse cycle where we have a south node, where we have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse 6 months apart in the same sign on the Libra Aries axis. We may already have done one round of releasing. And we're off to the final set. As I said in the weekly overview for this week, either opportunities will start to show up or you're fed up with the status quo. And the sun conjuncting the south node is going to bring a certain amount of clarity there. Mercury conjuncting it, between the sun, Mercury, and the south node communicating, and they're all meeting up and having a tete-a-tete, a tea party, and talking about before the new moon occurs. What needs to happen? What needs to be released? That's my cat snoring now. Isn't it sweet? It is actually really sweet. He's so sweet. So respectful. When I'm sleeping, of course, the moment my eyes open up and he senses that sort of shift in breathing or whatever it is, he knows that, how soon between Abby's eyes opening and my breakfast? Like, what is the shortest time between those two things? But what's very sweet is that when I am sleeping, he's very protective of my sweet sleep time. Very protective, very watchful. And so I feel obliged to do the same thing. I just kind of let him sleep. And now, of course, he probably knows that I'm talking about him, so he stopped snoring. These are the 2 points of clarification I wanted to give you. And I think they're kind of important. They're in the air. They're in the air. What is this Mercury opposing Neptune thing? Has something happened over the past few days that has put you back in that, here's that crisis in the house of part of the chart occupied by Pisces again, and I need to do something, either strategically or planning-wise, or actually be in communication and test the waters and see what response I get. But at least my communication will set a boundary. And then with the South Node, as we head to the Sun conjuncting the South Node, and Mercury conjuncting the South Node, and the Sun and Mercury conjuncting each other, and then the South Node solar eclipse on October the 2nd. And energetically, with the Sun recently and Mercury yesterday and today trining Pluto and Uranus. And whether or not an opportunity comes in an eclipsy way to shake us out of the status quo, or whether we've just had enough of the status quo that we're just like, this is it, this is the turning point. Between now and the end of the first week of June, whether or not an opportunity shows up, I am creating the change. It will be helpful for you to identify. It will be helpful for you to identify in the Libra part of the chart. What is this situation where either you're attached to something that, sometimes with the South Node eclipses, we have to give up an attachment to how we expect people to be or people to behave. So if Libra is in your 8th house, hear me on this. That means Aries is on, if you are Pisces rising, Aries is in the 2nd house, Libra is in the 8th house. You may, for example, if you're dealing with some sort of inheritance issue, or if you're dealing with some sort of taxation issue, you may have to give up an attachment as to how it is that you feel other people should act. Who other people should be. How you expect them to be, because they're not going to be that. Part of what needs to be released may have to do with the fact that some of those expectations, something in those relationships needs to be examined with regard to what our expectations are, because those relationships may never have reflected the fact that we have those expectations that are not showing up as the reality we're experiencing may mean that there was something about those relationships that wasn't entirely, was not built on a strong foundation anyway. So what needs to be released from a South Node perspective has this sense of familiarity, but something that has outlived its purpose, and something that is stagnant, and something that is holding us back from our growth. Even the crisis in Pisces that I talked about that occurred, when I go back to 2014, 15, 16, 17, remember at that time you had Chiron in Pisces, you had Neptune in Pisces, and you had the South Node eclipses in Pisces. Something there needed to be released. And between Neptune and Chiron there, not only were there lessons about wounds and healing, but then you had this kind of Neptunian haze to go along with it. It was something. I remember that time and the Pisces part of the chart. People didn't know. I mean, it was making everyone's head spin. And it never quite stabilized. Now finally we have the opportunity by January, February 26 and by February 27 to kind of do some handshakes and get to a point of stability. I am offering, I did, my last video yesterday was about the $50 30-minute eclipse readings that I am doing. So, and I'm sorry, that video made me cringe while I was doing it, but I was not going to repeat it. When you're kind of empathic and when you have trouble talking about, when doing those kinds of videos, almost, when you are offering something, it's best, I've learned, to just be methodical and straightforward about it and put that information out there. So anyone who finds that interesting and useful and helpful will avail of it or not. If you have my kind of personality and find it hard to talk about money and charging for things anyway, and it can feel energetically a little complicated, but I certainly learned my lesson from it. The video's there. Bottom line is I'm offering 30-minute $50 readings of how the eclipses are affecting your individual birth charts right now. So I'm also offering single topic or single area focus readings for 30 minutes that are a little bit more expensive. Not a whole lot, but a little bit more. But then I'm also offering my normal readings, which last 60 to 75 minutes and are much more holistic. If you want information on any on those readings or whatever, if you have any questions about them, etc., my email address is in the description box below. You can email me there. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, feel free to do so. And next to the subscribe button, there's a bell icon. If you hover over that, there's a wiggly bell on top. If you click on that, you'll be notified when I do new videos. If you found this video useful or helpful, or if you found that it contains useful information, or if you feel that someone else will benefit from this information, feel free to tell people about the channel or the video or whatever it is. And if you feel inclined, feel free to comment, like the video. I think gives it more circulation on YouTube, and it will help the channel. But you know, you don't have to force it, but it'd be nice. Whatever suits you. I hope you found this video helpful and useful. There are a few other aspects going on this week. Mars trine Saturn, Sun conjunct Mercury. So as I said, there's always the weekly overview if you want a broader sense of the week. But yeah, this is it. Either in the next video, I think what I want to do is that the next video is going to focus on what aspects are being made by the personal planets transiting through Libra. Because I think, again, all this content is really just leading up to that new moon solar eclipse in Libra. So I think I'm going to do that video, and then I'm going to do the new moon solar eclipse video. If for some reason I change my mind, then the next video will be on the solar eclipse. But the bottom line is that the solar eclipse video is coming. But we are in eclipse land. And I think the weekly overview actually will give you a sense of how to navigate where we are at with that eclipse land thing as well. And that might be helpful or useful to calibrate to. Okay. All of this, I keep pointing to that just to say this is not the weekly overview. This is pointing to a couple of things that I think that are important and relevant to expand to. And I certainly enjoyed putting this content on this video, let me tell you. It felt topical, it felt right, it felt like I had something to add, it felt like I had blah, blah, blah. But the reason why I keep bringing up the weekly overview is to say is if you want a sense of the actual energy of the time, even though this is titled Compass, that will give you a better sense of the energy of the week. All right, folks, over and out. And of course, just as I get done, there's peace and quiet in the air. I will see you guys soon.